Go inside the Crimson Tide with your hosts Rodney Orr and Gary Harris, keeping you informed on everything Alabama. And now, Tider Insider TV.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome into another edition of Tider Insider TV, presented each and every week by Buffalo Rock, alongside Rodney Orr from TiderInsider.com. I'm WVUA 23 Sports Director Gary Harris, and tonight, Pepsi from Buffalo Rock, a Southern original. Always refreshing, gets me ready to go. Now, before we get started, Rodney, I do have to say, I guess I'm going to have to start calling you because I know that I'm a fashion plate, and I don't know how you're figuring out what I'm wearing and trying to copy me, but this has got to stop.
Yeah. Well, you get in here before I do, so you could have called.
So next Tuesday, I'll make sure we're not wearing the same. But I tell you what, these are good-looking shirts. Yeah. Good-looking ties from the locker room. We'll talk more about them later on. Home of the original elephant wearer. Rod, we got football coming up, but let's begin with basketball. 5 straight losses to end the regular season has taken Alabama from a sure thing as far as the NCAA tournament to on the bubble at best. The Tide will get at least one more opportunity to impress the selection committee on Thursday when it faces Texas A&M at the SEC tournament, the team that beat them this past Saturday, 68-66 in College Station. Now, Bama's now just 17-14 overall and 8-10 in the SEC, and at times seems unmotivated and unsure of what they're doing. Rodney, what happened down the stretch?
It's a great question. I mean, you know, when you look at this team, I know that there's obviously from a fan standpoint a lot of disappointment because this team really appeared to be on the cusp of not only getting into the NCAA tournament, but some of the people that maybe considered experts thought this team had an opportunity, Gary, to make a really good run in the NCAA tournament. But here's the bottom line. You have to finish out the season. You can't start talking and worrying about the NCAA tournament. And I'm not saying the team did or Avery Johnson did. I know the questions came up all along. But you have to focus on finishing the regular season, and obviously they struggled doing that.
Rodney, remember when they blew out Tennessee at home, held them to 50? The next game, they blew out LSU. There were analysts and pundits talking about this team making a run to the Elite Eight and maybe even the Final Four.
Yeah.
Here's my thing, all right? And I know this is a different team, but the first 2 years Coach Johnson was here, I thought he did a really good job of getting his team to play close to its potential. But both years, they faltered down the stretch. So you would have thought this year, when 5 games to go, it was a tough 5-game stretch, but they're saying to themselves, listen, let's just win a couple of these games, and we're going to get in the tournament. They were in to go 0-5. I mean, to not win a single game, including getting blown out at home by Florida, losing at home to Arkansas, getting blown out at Auburn. Right now, in my opinion, they're not in the tournament. I'm not sure if they win Thursday, they're in the tournament. I said it, Rodney, before the season. I have to be consistent. I said it during the season. If this team doesn't make the NCAA tournament, it is a huge disappointment. Period. End of story. This team is good enough, in my opinion, to get in the tournament. So if they don't make it, and they might still make it, okay? But if they don't make it, there's no way to sugarcoat it. This year has been a disappointment.
Well, you know, Gary, you asked what happened. They went to Kentucky. There you see some highlights right there. Kentucky was what, had a 4-game losing streak and snapped it that night. That was the turning point right there.
That's right. They were in that game until a few minutes to go, wound up losing by 10. Haven't won since, and it's just been a downhill spiral. All right, earlier today, Avery Johnson met with reporters to discuss the upcoming SEC tournament, and he made a little bit of a case for his team and what they've done this season, and also talked about the fact that Texas A&M, clearly Alabama's familiar with the Aggies. They just played them last weekend. Here's Coach Johnson.
This year, during conference play, anybody can beat anybody. And we've had our shares of losses, but we've had our share of wins against some really good teams. Obviously, the team that we're playing in Texas A&M, we're very familiar with them. They're an outstanding rebounding team. They've gotten 36 offensive rebounds on us in 2 games. And, you know, they're long and athletic. So, you know, it's a couple of days turnaround before we have to play them again. But we're very familiar with them, and we're going to have to execute on both ends of the floor at a high level to be successful.
All right, so let me ask you, point blank, does Alabama beat A&M on Thursday?
Well, it's going to be really tough. I mean, you know, when you're on a skid like this, Gary, I think more than anything it becomes kind of mental. And the question is, with a young team like Avery Johnson has, how difficult is it to get these guys to say, listen, you know, we're still good. You know, look how we played throughout the season. Now we've got to somehow overcome whatever happened mentally.
They do have some good wins. And if they can beat A&M on Thursday, then beat Auburn, the #1 seed on Friday, they're in. So it is still in front of them. 2 more wins. I think you beat A&M, you beat Auburn. That's 19 wins. That's 2 wins over Auburn. I think that gets them in. So I don't want to close the door on them yet. But at the same time, still amazed this team down the stretch couldn't win a single game, going 0-5 its final 5 games. All right, let's move on to baseball, Rodney. Alabama got off to a 9-0 start. We knew they were going to lose eventually. They went to Oklahoma this past weekend. And even though they lost 2 of those games, I liked what I saw from this team. They lost a heartbreaker in extra innings, 2-1 on Friday night. Could have won it as easily as they lost it. They came back and got pasted pretty good on Saturday, but then bounced back on Sunday, and they blew out Oklahoma. So they didn't get swept. They didn't win the series, but getting one, particularly after you're down 2-0, I think that shows me something. It probably built a lot of confidence for them.
Yeah, I think it did, and obviously they got off to a great start, Gary, as you mentioned, at 9-0, and then, you know, we talked about it last week on the show. It was going to be really tough to go to Oklahoma and play the Sooners. I mean, you know, they're a quality program, but I think you learn a lot about yourself. Again, this is a young program. I think, you know, right now they've got off to a really, really good start. And I'm not just talking about for this season. I'm talking
historically,
about,
yeah.
I mean, I think that they've really built some, as you said, Gary, I think they've built some confidence because we really think, we've thought this all along, Brad Bohannon is going to do an outstanding job.
Yeah, now they begin a 9-game homestand tomorrow night against a very good Southern Mississippi team, a team that hosted a super regional last year, is ranked number 15 in the country this year. Here's Coach Bohannon talking about what this ball club learned about itself in the trip to Oklahoma.
We learned a lot about our club. I'm really glad we took that trip, and even though we lost 2 of 3, it was really valuable. In the most simplest form, I mean, we learned that we're capable of playing really good baseball, and when we do, we can beat a really good team. And we also learned that if we don't play well, we'll get our butts kicked by a good team. So I think you saw the whole spectrum. Played a good game on Friday that could have gone either way. Played our worst game of the year on Saturday and then responded really well and played our best game of the year on Sunday. So we were a smidge away from, you know, winning a tough series at a good opponent's place. So, you know, it was a good weekend for us.
This team really proving they can hit the baseball. And tomorrow night they'll face a team that's one of the best hitting teams in the country in Southern Miss. That'll be a heck of a game. Well, still to come on Tider Insider Television, former Alabama players took over the NFL Combine. We'll discuss what it means for the players hoping to be drafted and for the Alabama football program when guys show out in Indy. Plus, we'll be taking your phone calls, getting to your emails, and answering your tweets. The phone number is always 205-348-WVUA. That's 348-9882. Email us at the address on your screen, TIPV@WVUA23.com, or you can tweet at us. Use that hashtag TIPV so we can find it. We'll be right back with more of the show that takes you inside the Crimson Tide. The one, the only, Tider Insider TV will return right after this timeout. And welcome back to Tider Insider Television. Rodney Orr, Gary Harris. Of course, you know who you are. And thanks for joining us tonight. Let's talk NFL Combine. Just concluded on Monday in Indianapolis. And quite frankly, Rodney, it was a showcase for Alabama. 14 former Crimson Tiders participated. And I saw a headline that read, Bama players dominate the Combine. Rodney, excellent showing by the Crimson Tide contingent. Let's discuss what happened. And for Alabama, 5 defensive backs alone. I thought it should have been 15 total. I still don't know why Bradley Bozeman didn't get a invite. But here's Deron Payne at 311 pounds running a 4.91, man. Mm-hmm. He really was impressive, nearly 30 reps on the bench. He was already, I think, going to be a first-round pick, but now I think there are people talking about him maybe going in that 10 to 15 range.
Yeah, that's really big for him. He ran extremely well, obviously, Gary. It's hard to imagine, you know, at that size. And, you know, obviously he's got great strength and all of that. And we saw how he dominated the college football playoffs without question. So I really thought that was good. You mentioned the 5 defensive backs that Alabama had, Gary. Do you realize that those having 5 defensive backs, that's more than 90% of the other schools in the country had total, period?
Yeah.
I mean, think about that.
You know, it's so awesome, but it also tells me this. Alabama's got a lot of work to do in the secondary for next year.
Sure do.
But and some of those guys really, Tony Brown ran a 4.35, Anthony Averett a 4.36, Levi Wallace a 4.48. Minka was in that 4.5 range. And, Calvin Ridley ran a 4.44, Robert Foster a 4.41. It was one of those years where all the Alabama guys just really put up good numbers. Rashaan Evans did not run the 40, but looked great in the drills. He'll run it tomorrow. Ronnie Harrison will run it tomorrow. And, of course, Sean Deion Hamilton was limited coming off that knee surgery, but from what I was told, really impressed the coaches and scouts with how he handled himself. And there's Averett. He's a guy that, he's not big, but he can cover. And then when you talk about Tony Brown, if nothing else, he could be a special teams demon.
Yeah. Well, we knew he was going to blow it up. One guy we haven't mentioned, Deshaun Hand.
Yeah, I saw him earlier. He looked good.
6'4", 297, or close to 6'4", 297. And Gary, he ran, I think it was a 4.83, 4.84.
Yeah.
That's pretty incredible. A lot of people said Deshaun Hand, when he weighed in at 297, was too heavy. It didn't show up on his 40 time.
No, I think he wound up playing in the interior there in the National Football League. All right, let's move on. Alabama released its 15-day spring football practice schedule earlier today, and practice number 1 is set for 2 weeks from today. The Crimson Tide will return to the field on Tuesday, March 20th for its first spring practice. The campus-wide spring break, of course, is set for next week. It'll be the team's first time back on the field since winning the national championship in Atlanta on January 8th with a 26-23 overtime thriller against Georgia. March 20th will also be the first practice for Alabama's new offensive and defensive assistant coaches, as well as the first practice as coordinators for Mike Locksley and Tosh Lapoy. All 5 early enrollees will be practicing as well. Practices are closed to the public other than the 8A game on April 21st. Well, still to come on TITV, Habitat House 17 for 17. I'll explain what that means. And next, we'll be welcoming your phone calls, emails, and tweets. Get through now. We already have a couple callers on hold. 205-348-9882. You can email us at the address on your screen or tweet at us using that hashtag TITV. We'll be right back to hear what you have on your mind when Tider Insider Television returns. Rod, they're lined up on the phone lines for us. But real quickly, one thing I didn't mention that I teased that we were going to talk about, just real quick, the impact that Pro Day had, obviously for those athletes, but for the Alabama program, that kind of publicity. All these guys want to get to the NFL. I know Alabama doesn't need a lot of help in recruiting, but that has to be a huge shot in the arm.
Well, anytime, Gary, when you send that many players to the combine, clearly you're the #1 program. And that's what high school recruits look at. They want to go to the next level. They want to go to the NFL. And they look at all the success. And there's a lot of people. I know Alabama just won the national championship. But when you're talking about coaches at some of the competing schools, without naming names, they're saying Alabama's headed downward. It doesn't look that way.
Hard to make that case when you look at 14 guys at the combine. All right, let's go to the hotline. Stephen, first up in Northport. Hey, Stephen, how are you, man?
How you doing? Good, guys. Hey, listen, I got a couple of 3 questions real quick. I'm going to ask them all at one time, let y'all answer them and hang up and listen.
All righty.
Listen, is Herbert Jones going to be back for the Texas A&M game on Thursday? Because if he is, we'll win because he communicates well on the court.
All right.
Number 2, Gnarly Rice, how's his rehab coming? And have you heard if he's coming back next year? And third, I know we brought in a bunch of great players this year. But what has happened to Braxton Key?
All righty. We got him. First on Herbert Jones, I don't know. I mean, that's a deal where I don't think they called it a concussion, but he has to be cleared to play. If he's cleared by the medical doctors, I assume he will play on Thursday. But, again, I'm not 100% sure. Avery Johnson, we had some of his sound. I'm going to listen to that entire press conference tonight in case I missed something. But we'll have to wait and see. On Riley Norris, Rodney, we don't know what he's going to do. He qualifies for a red shirt because he didn't play enough games. I'm hearing he could possibly come back here, or he might go somewhere else as a graduate transfer. I got a feeling that he's going to play basketball next year. I'm just not sure where. And finally, on Braxton Key, it's a great question. Rod, I'll let you chime in on this. He was an All-SEC freshman last year, kind of even as a freshman became his team. All these new guys came in. He was out for a while with that knee injury. It just seems like he's had a hard time kind of finding his niche, so to speak, and fit in with this team.
Yeah, well, you do have a lot of new players, for one thing, Gary, and you talked about it, and, I know everyone talks about a sophomore slump and all of that. I don't really believe in that. But for whatever reason, you're right. The combination hasn't really worked really well.
All right, let's go down to Opelika to Kurt down there in Auburn country. Kurt, what's going on, man? Kurt, you with us? Kurt, you're on the air, buddy. Talk to us. Kurt. All right, well, we got to move on. We already talked about this a little bit, NCAA tournament chances. Sorry we couldn't get you on, Kurt. But, I said it earlier. I think Alabama's got to win 2 games. I think if they beat A&M, maybe But if they beat A&M and then are able to beat Auburn, I think they're in. Short of that, I don't feel good about Alabama's chances. I just think ending the regular season on a 5-game losing streak, Rodney, is too much to overcome.
Well, you know, again, who knows how to predict these things? I'm not really good at that in terms of the NCAA tournament. But I'll say this, Gary. I think if they beat Texas A&M, I'm going to give them a little bit better opportunity than you are.
Okay, well, that would put them at 18 and 14.
Yeah, I think so.
We know
with some of the wins that Avery Johnson talked about, you know, he certainly pointed it out. They didn't dodge anybody, and they played some really good teams and won some really big games. So I'm going to think that if they beat Texas A&M and rebound from this 5-game losing streak, they're in.
I think we both agree on this, though. If they lose to A&M, they're out.
gone.
Yeah, that'd be 17 and 15, and NIT, here we come. All right, let's go to Anniston and talk with our pal Harold. Harold, how are you doing, man?
Hey, how you doing, guys?
Very well.
Gary, I agree with you, man. This is just ridiculous, man. They were in fantastic shape, man, to be in, and I don't know what Avery's thinking about, man. You're 17 and 13, and you oh my God, I don't care who you beat, man. Look at your record. And then it's just ridiculous, man. We can't hold on every year. It's just like throwing a lifeline and it disintegrates in your hand.
Yep, you got to finish, don't you? Harold, you do, and they just didn't. But as we've pointed out, there's still hope. This team is good enough to beat A&M. They've done it once this year. They're good enough to beat Auburn. They've done it once this year. Who knows? They're probably good enough to win the SEC tournament. So I'm not feeling great right now just because of the way this team is playing, but we've seen teams go into the tournament when you don't think they got much left and they get on a roll. If this team gets on a roll, maybe next week we're having a different conversation. It would be great, wouldn't it? All right, we're going to take a time out. Thanks for the phone calls and emails that we've had so far, but don't go anywhere because we've got more to come here on TITV. We'll get to more of your phone calls. 205-348-9882 is the number. We've also got some emails to get to. You can still tweet at us as well. Keep it tuned right here. More Tider Insider TV coming up after this. And now that the NFL Combine has concluded, and let's take a look. Well, we'll take a look at the Alabama Pro Day in just a moment. We can tell you that I might not put that video in there, but Pro Day is coming up tomorrow at Alabama. We can tell you that for sure, and it'll be right there at the Hank Crisp Indoor Facility. And those guys that didn't go to the Combine or the guys that didn't participate in all of the different events will have an excellent opportunity to do so tomorrow. All right, welcome back to TITV. Let's get to an email before we go back to the phone lines, and this is from Caleb in Hubbardville. Wanted to know the role of an offensive analyst, Rodney. Of course, this is in direct correlation to the fact that we're expecting Butch Jones to be hired. So why don't you I know they do a lot of different things, but kind of sum that up a little bit.
And it may be different in different places, and I don't think Nick Saban's certainly ever given the media kind of a breakdown of what exactly his guys do. But, you know, when you look at an analyst, Gary, whether it's offense, defense, you know, he could, like you said, he could do a multitude of things in terms of he could scout what you're doing. Certainly he could lend ideas, you know, to what other teams are doing on the opposite side of the ball that might be helpful to your offense. I mean, they could just do a lot of preparation for in advance of, you know, future opponents. So many different things. And again, I don't know exactly what Nick Saban has his analysts do, but there's certainly a lot of things that we talked about here that they could be involved in.
And as far as Butch Jones joining the staff, I know there are a lot of jokes going around, but heck, man, this is a chance to get a guy who just spent 5 seasons as a head coach in the SEC to join your staff as an analyst. I think it's a no-brainer. I think it's great.
Yeah, I really don't get it. I mean, look, the guy did a good job. He knows football. I know people joke about his cliches and all of the things that he says, the champions of life and all of those things. People think it's funny, but the guy really did a good job at Tennessee. I mean, he did a fantastic job kind of rebuilding the program in terms of where it was. So I think if you can get a guy of that magnitude to be an analyst, certainly.
Home run. All right, let's go back to the phone lines and talk with our pal BT. BT, what's going on, man?
Hey, Gary,
hey,
Ronnie, how y'all doing tonight?
Doing well.
I want to ask, what are we going to have to do to change in the SEC tournament to make things better?
Well, BT, they're going to have to play better. I mean, that's the short answer. I don't know. You said something about the starting lineup. He's tweaked the starting lineup quite a bit. He's tweaked this rotation. Daniel Giddens didn't play Saturday. You know, Galen Smith got his minutes. He's tried a lot of different things. He started Braxton Key. He's brought Braxton Key off the bench. So I think Avery's trying to punch the right buttons. He's got a few days to figure it out now. I think with young players, sometimes it's good to say, this is over, brand new season. Rodney, if they can do that, they've got the talent to not only beat A&M, but to make a run deep into this tournament.
Yeah, well, you said it right there, Gary. I mean, when you talk about a fresh start, I mean, this is that opportunity. But the one thing you kind of worry about, to be honest with you, watching this team down the stretch, and I hope this isn't it, have they mailed it in?
We'll find out, won't we, on Thursday? Let's get one more quick email in, Seth and Trey. I think we got time to get one more quick email in before we go. If Tua is the starting quarterback, will Jalen move to safety? That's from Lisa Hoover. Rodney, the short answer for me is no. Yeah. I think Jalen feels like he's a quarterback. I think he wants to compete. I think he's going to stick it out. I think he's talented enough to play other positions, but right now I think, in my opinion, he'll want to remain a quarterback.
Yeah, Jalen Hurts is Jalen Hurts. I mean, I think that he is a quarterback, and certainly in his mind. And, listen, he is a great athlete, but when you look at him, Gary, is he really a guy that could play another position? Maybe, maybe not. I just think he's always been a quarterback.
All right, Lisa, thanks for the email. We'll come back on a beautiful night in Tuscaloosa and wrap up this edition of TITV right after this. This is such a heartwarming story. Coach Saban, Miss Terry, about 30 Alabama football players in conjunction with the Knicks Kids Fund and Habitat for Humanity worked to build the 17th National Championship Habitat House for the Smith family, Donna, her daughter Megan, and son Andrew this past Saturday. It's the 17th home since the 2011 Tornadoes won for each national championship for the Tide. Man, that's awesome, isn't it, Rod?
People are going to want those shirts.
Yeah, and Coach Saban was working. Did you see that? All right, that is going to wrap it up. Before we get out of here, though, our beautiful shirts and ties, as we mentioned at the top, provided by the Locker Room in downtown Tuscaloosa, home of the original elephant wear and so much more. Get by and see them in person or shop online at their website, locker-room.biz. They'll have you looking your best. All right, you can catch a replay of the show tonight at 10:30 here on WVOA 23, or you can catch it on our website anytime at WVOA23.com. So for Rodney Orr, I'm Gary Harris. Thanks for watching Tider Insider TV. We'll see you next week. Have a good night, everyone.